Hi all and welcome back, chameleons, to my channel of An Everyday Life of an Aspie. Right now I'm doing some autism related videos, as you can see, before the end of the year, which I humbly apologise in advance. I was going to do some Vlogmas ones, but I didn't have much planned for this year, obviously, because it crept up so fast, as we know. So this one's going to be a continuation on the very first one I just mentioned about Asperger's syndrome is no longer a diagnosis, which I clearly mentioned, which I'll link in the icon and in the description box below me so you can follow through, because I mentioned about understanding the 3 levels of autism in one part of that segment, which now is coming into effect of this video as of now. As we know, basically, like, autism is a spectrum disorder, meaning that a person with autism can be mildly, moderately, or severely autistic. What's more, while everyone with autism has certain core symptoms, many people may also have additional intellectual or language impairments, which I clearly illustrate in what is autism spectrum disorder, which you can find in the iCard in the description box below you. Since everyone with autism receives the same diagnosis of ASD, or autism spectrum disorder, the creators of the official Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders 5th edition, or the DSM-5, which are clearly shared some parts of the DSM-5, which will be in the iCard above me in the description box below me if you want to find out more. And in saying this, I'll also be bringing out more in-depth information based on how it is identified, also based on this criteria of diagnosing of autism in New Zealand later today. So if you wanted to find more about this, stay tuned for that. In the DSM-5, however, this identifies the 3 levels of the disorder, which each one requiring a different level of support. This helps the clinicians provide a more specific diagnosis, and also helps those involved in the care of people with autism have a clearer understanding of a person's limitations. The 3 levels reflect individuals' abilities to communicate, adapt to new situations, expand beyond restricted interests, and manage daily life. As I said, you can see in the diagram, obviously there are 3 levels, so this is what it's going to be illustrating right now, the 3 function levels of autism. People at level 1 will need relatively little support, while people at level 3 will need a great deal of support, as illustrated above me. So the 3 functional levels of autism, while the idea of ASD levels of support makes logical sense, however, in the criteria DSM-5 criteria book manual, it's not always easy for clinicians to assign a level, however, to the person that has been clinically diagnosed with autism. What's more though, however, the assessment of levels can be somewhat subjective. It also is most likely very possible for someone to change levels over time as their skill sets may improve and other issues such as anxiety may decrease. But then again, it may vary from person to person, as I said, for certain characteristic traits and symptoms and the like that comes into the effect of autism. How the diagnosis of autism changed in the DSM-5, you may be questioning, is the DSM is the official publication from the American Psychiatric Association team that defines psychiatric and developmental disorder. While it has no legal status, the DSM does have an enormous impact on the way insurers, schools and other service providers think about and treat autism. Until 2013, recently, it has been republished, and the DSM described autism spectrum as a disorder that included 5 distinct diagnoses, which are as follows, basically, even though, as I said before, that Asperger's syndrome was essentially a synonym for high-functioning autism. While autistic disorder meant almost the same thing as severe autism. People given diagnosis of pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, or PODNOS, had some but not all of the symptoms of autism. Symptoms could either be mild or severe. However, Rett syndrome and Fragile X syndrome, rare genetic disorders, were also considered to be part of the autism spectrum. In May 2013, the DSM-5 was published. The DSM-5, unlike the DSM-4, defines autism as a single spectrum disorder with a set of criteria describing symptoms in the areas of social communication, behavior, flexibility, and sensory sensitivity. Anyone who had already been diagnosed with one of these disorders were essentially grandfathered to meet the criteria for autism spectrum disorder. A new diagnosis, social communicational disorder, was created to classify people with very mild versions of autism-like symptoms. So the ASD levels of support here, however, the autism spectrum is incredibly wide and varied from person to person. As I said, some people with autism are extremely intelligent, while others are intellectually disabled. Some have severe communication problems, while others, on the other hand, may become authors, public speakers, and the like. To address this issue, the DSM-5 diagnostic criteria include 3 functional levels, as I mentioned, each of which are defined based most of the amount of support that is needed for that specific person to require to function in their general activities as well as in the general community in itself. Adding a functional level to an autism spectrum diagnosis should make it possible to draw a clearer picture of the individual's abilities and needs, at least in theory. Here are the 3 levels as described in the DSM-5 as mentioned. So ASD level 3 will require very substantial support. At this level, severe deficits in verbal and non-verbal social communication skills can cause severe impairments in functioning, very limited initiation of social interaction with their peers, and a minimal response to social overtures from others. Inflexibility of behaviour, extreme difficulty coping with change or other restrictive, repetitive behaviours markedly interferes with functioning in all spheres. The person who may experience great distress, difficulty in changing focus or action in this level. A person with ASD level 3 will have a very limited ability to speak intelligibly and will rarely initiate interactions. When they do initiate an interaction, they will do so awkwardly. Someone at level 3 will also respond only to very direct social approaches on the part of other people. ASD level 2, however, will require substantial support. People at level 2 with ASD may show marked deficits in verbal and non-verbal social communication skills, social impairments that are apparent even with supports in place, limited limitations or initiation of social interactions, I should say, and reduced or abnormal responses to social overtures from others. Inflexibility of behaviour, difficulty coping with change or other restrictive repetitive behaviours may appear frequently enough to be obvious to the casual observer and interfere with functioning in a variety of contexts. Those at level 2 may also experience distress and or difficulty changing their focus or action. A person diagnosed with ASD level 2 speaks in simple sentences that is limited to narrow special interest and displays markedly odd form of non-verbal communication. Last but not least, ASD level 1. This one requires a bit of support. Without supports in place, a person with ASD level 1 will show deficits in social communication that causes noticeable impairment. May have little interest in social interactions with their peers, having difficulty initiating social interactions, and clearly demonstrate atypical or unsuccessful responses to the social overture of others. Someone with level 1 will demonstrate inflexibility that causes significant interference with functioning in one or more contexts, as well as difficulty switching between activities. Problems with organisation and planning hamper their independence. A person with level 1 ASD is able to speak in full sentences and communication, but attempts at back and forth conversation with others fail, while attempts at making friends are odd and typically unsuccessful also. What's missing from the ASD levels of support here? As you have probably already realised that with these 3 autism levels raise as many questions as they answer. For example, what type of support did the American Psychiatric Association have in mind when it developed these functional levels? An aide, a personal care assistant, a one-on-one school aide, a job coach, a college advisor? In which situations do people at various levels require support? Some people with autism do fine at home but need help in school where demands are really specific and intense. Other people with autism do well at school but may need help in social and work settings, as I mentioned before. Some people with autism have received sufficient therapy to appear close to typical when interviewed by a single adult but have significant issues when interacting with their own peers. What type of support do they need? Do the levels of support refer back to any way to the services that are provided? The answer so far appears to be sometimes. Anxiety is a very common trait among people with higher functioning autism, however, and this can cause extreme challenges in everyday typical situations and settings. If a person is bright, verbal and academically capable but anxious and depressed, and thus in need of significant support in order to function in a job or school, where do they fit into the picture? It is understandable if you are somewhat confused about the new functional levels of ASD. I don't blame you, because I'm still learning this as I go along while I am an autistic myself. Where you or your child fits, or whoever fits into this criteria of these levels. Over time, the APA and autism organisations will be collecting information from practitioners, insurers, parents and those with ASD who are advocating for themselves to get a sense of whether or not and how this new system is working for them. There is a very good chance that the DSM 5.1, the next version of the DSM 5, will include changes to the functional levels as information will become readily available. So as you know, basically this quickly ends a real short video, short and brief, about the understanding the levels of autism. If you want to find out more based on what I share based on the autism topics, you can click up above me based on in the end card, as we'll leave today, about the Help Central versus maybe, I don't know, I could put up the most popular one at the moment of a playlist based on tantrums, meltdowns and whatnot, because I know for a fact that many parents face this on a daily with their kids. So hopefully some of this will help you guys, as well as in saying this, some of the stuff that I have been sharing has been helping you. Please let me know also if you want to know more based on this, or me to learn more about you guys as I'm leaving today, for a question for you all. As we're discussing about the levels of autism, how do you feel about this kind of diagnostic kind of criteria that they have put into place so far, or about to in the next version, as I mentioned, 5.1 of the DSM? And in saying this, if you're based on any of these levels, you know, let me know how you feel about this diagnosis of the levels of yours. Does it, you know, change over time for you? Do you need help? Do you basically feel that it should change again? How do you feel about all of this diagnostic criteria and to perspective as well, just to create a conversation for us before I go also? So I'm sort of saying this to those of you who are new. As you know, I'm SB Answers. I create, educate, advocate, navigate through life with autism and mental health, and taking you on a journey when I'm able to show you life as an autistic adult, especially with fun and games along the way, hopefully just to break it up a bit so that you can see the other side of me, sometimes having fun with some people or whatever. So also in saying this, as I said before, I am in the works of creating my website, which I've shared earlier of what I've been up to. So if this is part of the many projects that I'm working on alongside with my podcast. So if you want to help support me, big or small, by, you know, pledging to this, feel free to do so by, you know, going over to my Patreon page, which you'll find in the description, as well as hopefully above you right now. So in saying this, basically, like, for those who don't know, Patreon is like almost like a crowdfunding or some form of funding support for content creators like me, or music creators, or whoever it may be that's needing some financial support to help them support their costs of what they're doing, be it like example wise for me, future projects and works on my website versus my podcast, versus also hopefully in the near future I'm going to be needing new equipment for recording on for my podcast versus my videos when and when I'm able to do so, to, you know, do this, as well as on saying this to come into effect also for my other future projects, which will be traveling when the borders open again, as well as hopefully in saying this some merch designing that will need costing for me to print out, and so much more. So if you want to, like I said, donate big or small, head over there basically, and they'll be much appreciated. It doesn't have to be a big amount. Any bit counts, as I said, because obviously at the end of the day I want to continue what I'm doing right now, what I love to do with you guys, and that's educating, advocating and navigating through life with autism and mental health, regardless if it's on my social medias, through YouTube, through my podcast, or wherever you may find me, because like I said, together we should be able to make a difference, especially here in New Zealand, because there's a lacking of advocates and healthcare supporters and that. So I'm hoping, being this voice of my lived experiences, someone can relate one way or another, and to know you guys aren't alone. So in all further ado, thanks for support, thanks for watching, deal with love, love what you do. Until next time, I'll see you again soon, and have a great day. Ciao for now.